All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Johnny on the Track, and I'm super, super excited to share today's episode because we have a very, very special guest, someone who I met probably at this point, I would say maybe 7, 8 years ago was the first time I met this man who is on the screen, which is crazy to think about how time flies. You might already know him, but let's give him a little introduction. So he's the current Senior Director of Communications for RFK Racing. He was a pit reporter in NASCAR from 2007 to 2016 with the likes of ESPN, NBC, and of course, I saved the best for last. He's an Emerson College alum, a Lion at heart. He is the one and only Mike Massaro. Mike, thank you for joining me. It's been a while. Happy to have you back.
Great to be here. Always good to be introduced as a lion. It's been a very long time since that's happened, but I appreciate it, Johnny. Good to be here.
For sure, for sure. So, yeah, man, I just talked about the fact that from 2007 to 2016, you were a pit reporter in NASCAR. Obviously, life changes a little bit. You go in different directions. I know you did a few years ago, did a little bit more pit reporting in ARCA, but essentially, it's been like 9 years since you've been in around the sport on a day-to-day basis. How does it feel to be back in the sport that you kind of grew up in, grew up loving, like all that stuff? How's it feel to be back?
Feels great. The response I got when I walked into Daytona in February was overwhelming.
Mhm.
So many people coming up to me, welcoming me back. It felt like, rejoining the family. I kind of joke that I'm the prodigal son, right? I've come back. As you said, I had been around it for quite some time. 2007 is when I began as a pit reporter, but I was in the sport way before that.
Mhm.
Working at Stafford Speedway in the mid 90s, MRN radio. Also in the late 90s, I started in television in 1999 on Inside NASCAR, and I actually joined ESPN in 2001 as a reporter for Sports Center. Going to the racetrack. So I'd been around it a long time. Obviously, made quite a few friends. Built relationships in the sport that have lasted the test of time. You
Mhm.
mentioned 9 years off. Yeah, and still a lot of those folks welcomed me back. I was expecting, I think, when I walked into Daytona that nobody would remember me. But that was not the case. It was anything but. So it's been great to be back.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you back. Again, you just talked about how long you've been in the sport. So, yeah, I'm sure it's just that feeling of that refreshed feeling of like, okay, this is what it's like to be back in the fuel, back in the madness, if you will. So, I got a bunch of things I want to talk about with you, but I'm going to jump around a little bit now. Like, what was that conversation? Like, how was this process? How did it all come about? Of like, was it just simply, hey, I saw an opportunity for RFK, I just applied on something like that? Or was it something unfolded, contacts, connections, this, that, the other thing? What, take me through that.
I think it was this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's basically what it was. No, I did not apply for it. I don't even think the job was posted. Just like a lot of jobs out there in the world, I think the hiring manager was looking for the right fit,
Hmm.
and they reached out to me. So essentially, what happened was Kevin Woods, who was the director of marketing for RFK, reached out to me. This was after I had already gone down to Charlotte back in September just to kind of network and talk with some people, let them know that I was, trying to kick the tires, so to speak,
Okay, all right.
understand what might still be out there if I wanted to come back. So in January, RFK Racing had a need in the communications department, and Kevin reached out to me. And I've known Kevin for 25 years,
Okay.
probably going back to almost day one when I was in the sport. He had been a PR person. He was Mark Martin's PR person.
Okay.
And I obviously was a reporter. So I'd built a relationship with Kevin. And so Kevin was one of the people I spoke with in September. And Kevin remembered that I was still looking and kind of inquired as to whether or not I'd be interested. And I said to myself, this is it's different than what I've done,
Hmm.
but it's interesting, intriguing, and I thought I'd take a shot. And so here I am, several weeks into the season, and still learning quite a bit. I'm not going to lie. I'm still adjusting because it's not broadcasting.
Yeah.
It's public relations, but it's a whole lot more too. It's sponsor relations,
Hmm.
it's driver relations. Coordinating their schedule, making sure that they're all the appearances that they're required to be at, making sure that they agree to some of the appearances, and we work through their people, their own individual people, to try to make sure we come up with a calendar that works for them and works for RFK Racing. So there's a lot to it. There's definitely a lot of coordination, a lot of management, if you will, on top of the storytelling that we continue to do. I really enjoy. I think what the favorite part of my job is at the end of the race when I get to write a recap, because it
Okay.
feels more like sportscasting, right? I'm writing a story. I'm telling a story. That's my favorite part so far. But there are so many exciting parts of it, and I see a side of the sport that I never saw before,
Hmm.
and that's the business side. The importance of the sponsorships. I always knew they were important, but I didn't know how they worked Monday through Friday, and I'm getting a better glimpse at how that all comes together.
It's funny. You should talk to Carl Edwards because he seems like a guy where like, is he coming back? Is he coming back? You take the jump and he just obviously we're seeing Casey Kane get back in a race car. Every time I think about like the networking and like the opportunities getting back, like he has so many. You just feel like, geez, like pull the plug at some point. We'd love to see you back in a car. That's like every time I think about that, but. Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's interesting. So, like day to day, what does a day to day look like? Obviously, this is so much different again, and from the broadcasting sphere, the broadcasting world. What's that day to day?
Uh, it's hard to break that down, Johnny, because it's
Yeah,
different every day,
yeah,
right? So Monday through Friday, generally you've got your business hat on, right? You're working with sponsors, trying to understand how to maximize their sponsorship, how to get a better return on their investment, amplify their messages, so to speak. That
yep.
for example, a few weeks ago, heading into Darlington, Castrol unveiled a major marketing campaign that we were a part of, but I can't say we were the marketing campaign. It's a global campaign that they had around 7 critical claims of their oil, and they wanted to shine a light on that through our race team. So there's a new paint scheme that had to be put together. That took several weeks. I was basically just a fly on the wall for that because I'm not an artist. So they worked with our designer, and I just kind of listened and kind of watched how that all came together. They put together their own press release because Castro is a very large organization. They have their own advertising agency who we worked with. But once we got their message and we understood their press release, we amplified it by sending it out through our channels, through all
Hmm.
our media contacts. We also pushed it through our social media channels, and so we magnified their messaging. We also helped coordinate. We collaborated with Burson, who is their advertising agency, to make sure that Brad was a participant in a media tour, if you will. Put
Yep.
together several interviews for Brad Keselowski, and so there were a lot of things. So that this is, these all came together Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, as you might expect, you're at the racetrack, right?
Yep.
So you're doing things that are in the middle of all the activity, and generally I'm taking care, and this is the irony, right? I'm taking care of the pit reporters. I'm making
Oh,
sure the pit
wow.
report, yeah, right. So making sure the pit reporters have notes, have the most updated information on car condition of our 3 cars, and that's Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Preece. So I'm making sure that during practice and qualifying that I'm texting these pit reporters notes on car condition, and I do the same thing on race day, making sure they're up to speed with everything that's happening. Now, I do have an associate, Cole Peterson, who is a young man. He's the age of my son. He's 23 years old. So
Okay.
we're the yin and the yang of the PR department over there at RFK, if you will. He definitely has a different perspective on things because of his generation. I have a different perspective because of mine, and I think we really work well together. And so, being on the PR side of things, like I said, it's ironic. I'm taking care of the people who currently do the job that I used to do. So it's fun.
What a flip in life.
Right.
How crazy life goes.
Right.
It's funny. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I can't tell if it's because obviously I'm a huge Priest fan, right? I'm a New England guy. He's, it's him, it's Logano, it's those type of guys that I root heavily for, right? So I can't tell if it's I've just been like tuned in and locked in more on RFK, right? I follow like all the Priest accounts for updates throughout the race, obviously as I'm watching live, but to hear like what's the chatter on the radio, all that stuff. But what I'm getting at is the thing that I have noticed is the social media from you guys has been top tier, top notch from close up driver content to fun stuff. I think of like Priest like drinking the like gas or whatever, the oil, whatever that was. Like it's been cool to watch. And it NASCAR has done it as well. NASCAR has taken a huge step up this year with some of the cool content they're doing. But you guys as well, I feel like when we look at the different teams, you guys are top tier. Like, have you helped in that? Have you noticed that like that aspect take a huge jump year over year?
Well, I mean, I can't talk to how it's made a jump year over year because I've only been there a few months, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I will say this: I can't take any credit really for the social media. It was
Okay.
there before I was there, right? We've got a great social media team. They do an amazing job, and they are younger. They are younger. They're in their 20s. The folks that take care of that account, and they do a nice job. They blend humor with the authenticity. Authenticity. What's the word I'm looking for? They make it authentic. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
All right. So they do a nice job making it fun, making it entertaining, but also informative. So
Yeah.
I give them a lot of credit. I'm actually learning a lot from them because social media, while I certainly know it, is not something that I grew up with. Right? It's something that I've adapted to. When you're in your 20s and you're a social media manager, that's something you grew up with, right? That's something you've had since probably middle school. And so it's in their DNA a lot deeper than it is in mine. So I'm still learning from them, and I'm really privileged to have a team like that to work with. So they do a good job, and I'm happy to hear that you like it.
Yeah, no, shout out the RFK social team and department. They are you guys are doing a great job. It's fun to watch. So, all right, let's shift gears a little bit. We talked about kind of the new opportunity for you here in NASCAR now. Let's talk about the landscape of NASCAR. Obviously, you were in the era of Jeff, prime Jeff, right? Prime Jimmy, Tony, Junior, those guys. Now it's a
That's my
different era.
graduating class, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now it's the era of the Larsons, the Elliots, that sort of right, the end of the era of the Hamlins and the Bushes, the guys I grew up watching. So, what changes have you seen, right, from your start, your early days in NASCAR, from your time off to now you're back? Like, I see a lot of different things, and even you touched on some of the actual business side of it, which I think is bigger now than it ever
Mhm.
has been. Even just when I'm at the racetrack, like in some of the opportunities I've done at the track, you kind of see like the sponsor side of things up close. But what are some of the changes you've seen from your time away now back in NASCAR, both positive and negative? Because I look, there's definitely two sides of it for sure. Talk to me through that.
All right. So first up, Johnny, I'm now a PR representative, so I can't be negative. So that you
True,
won't get
true,
any of that.
true. There,
So
yes,
you won't get any
yes,
of that. But what I will say is that the biggest difference for me is just the format of the race weekend. And
yeah,
I think folks have seen over the course of time the sport change gradually. I have had, whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but I've been able to look at the sport, from where it was in 2016 to where it is in 2025. So the changes to me are more dramatic, right? I
yeah,
haven't seen them gradually change. The format of the weekend is shorter. The fact that they only have generally one practice a weekend and that practice is less than an hour blows my mind
unbelievable.
because I can think back to the early 2000s, late 90s when there were hours of practice,
Yeah,
several practice, three or four of them. They were changing engines in between practice and qualifying and things like that. There was all kinds of things that were different. The weekend was much longer. Things were jam packed on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Now, generally, it's just Saturdays and Sundays.
hmm
It's much more condensed. I'll be honest, I kind of like it from from a working standpoint, it makes the weekend a little bit more manageable for me as a professional in the sport. I don't know whether or not it saves teams money. I've heard that it hasn't because they're still pouring tons of money into the sport regardless of the weekend and the way it's formatted. But I kind of like it. I guess the only thing that I'm hearing that people don't like about the format is that there's not enough practice to really dial in your race car before the race. It's almost as if you've got what you got. You've got a little time, but there's not a lot of time like you used to have back, like I said, in the early 90s, or excuse me, late 90s, early 2000s, when you could just continue to dial that car in and dial it in and dial it in. uh, what impact that's had on the racing, I can't really say. I'm not a driver. I'm not a crew chief, so I'm not sure how it's affected them. That'd be an interesting question for them for sure.
Yeah.
But that to me has been the biggest change. The other things, and I don't think it's any different than it's been any other generation. You just see, as you mentioned, that the drivers that I was around back when my career was in full swing. There were Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., so on and so forth, Mark Martin, Rusty Wallace, Dale Jarrett. I can go on, right? But I did see then what I continue to see now. There's always a generational change. When I first got in, it was Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin and Dale Jarrett and Dale Earnhardt, right? Jeff Gordon. And then you saw a change in generation. Then you
Mhm.
saw the upstarts. Jimmy Johnson was an upstart. Ryan Newman, Matt Kenseth. It just kind of changed, right? The new generation, the younger set. And then we're seeing it again. We're seeing, you know, uh, some of the guys like Denny Hamlin, Brad, they're probably the veterans, Kyle Busch, they're the veterans right now, right? And you're seeing a shift toward the younger generation, the Kyle Larsons of the world. The younger drivers are really gaining a lot of attention, a lot of momentum on the racetrack, and it seems like there's another generational swing that's ongoing right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? And I've kind of seen, I guess, like I'll say three generations of it, kind of like the
Mhm.
Johnson, the early 2000s, right, when I was super young, and then that kind of middle generation, obviously the young guys now, which take nothing away from them, because you got guys like Larson, Elliott, heck, even Busher, right? Like these
Yeah.
guys are just so talented. You feel like I don't know, maybe just like more talented than they've ever been, just because like I don't know why that is, but I just feel like that way. I'll tell you, Gordon's the greatest of all time in my opinion, but just from a speed standpoint, a technique standpoint, man, I like watching Larson like just do what he does out there is fascinating. It really is. So I guess the only thing I would say that I find different, and I can't put my finger on why it is, especially when we just talked about social media, is like, why can we not really amplify these stars like a Chase Elliott, like a Kyle Larson? Like you just feel like Elliott is the most popular driver in NASCAR, but you don't really see him out around town, if you will, right? Like on shows, doing Saturday Night Live, that sort of thing. Where we used to see that, and I feel like it amplified the sport, amplified the personalities. Like if you and I walk into a conversation with people that really don't nothing about NASCAR, and we mention the name Jeff Gordon, oh, the NASCAR driver, it just feels like today that we just lack that a little bit. And honestly, what I say to you is in your role in like that's what I hope you can help like grow, get that aspect back of things. Do you see that aspect of things as well?
To a degree.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. There was a time I think when there were more household names, drivers who transcended the sport, if you will, the Dale Earnhardts of the world, Dale Earnhardt Juniors, Jeff Gordon. I Right now I think there is some challenge in that regard. If I had the answer to that, Johnny, I would have a much bigger job making a lot more money, I think. Because I think there's so many very intelligent people that are trying to solve that problem
Yeah.
and trying to get as much exposure for the sport and, you know, have it transcend into pop culture, have it cross over and reach the people who don't necessarily consider themselves NASCAR fans so that they still have an understanding of what's happening there. And obviously, the goal is to attract them to the sport, make them fans. So I know there's an ongoing effort to attract new fans
Hmm.
and build these stars, if you will, so that you have, the recognizable names that you've had in the past, the Earnhardts, the Gordons. I mean, not just NASCAR. I mean, there are other, you think back into the past, the Mario Andretti's, the AJ Foyts,
Yep.
people today still know those names, right? But, are we creating big enough stars right now? I think the effort is definitely there to do that.
Yeah.
Whether or not, we're reaching those goals at this point, I don't know, but it's not for a lack of effort. That's for sure.
No, that's good insight, and I'm sure everybody watching appreciates you saying that, because that makes us feel like.
And let me just add to that. When I talk about the effort, some of the things that NASCAR is doing to help promote their drivers and promote their sport. There's a lot that's happening right now to try to do that. Whether it's a streaming content that NASCAR Productions is putting together that's coming out. They've got some really good productions that are in the works or probably completed already, but are slated to be released a little bit later this year.
Mhm.
So I've been given a little peek behind the curtain on some of those. I don't think I can actually talk about what they are, but there's some really good content that's been created that will be able to go out in different platforms that people will be able to consume. And I think that's really going to help. They've also launched this year what they call the Driver Ambassador Program.
Okay.
For short, they call it DAP, if you will. It's an incentive program for the drivers to participate in more media interviews and
Hmm.
just get involved. And so, I guess it's for every 15 minutes of media they do, they get 1 point. Some drivers have a multiplier, so they get more, if they're a bigger name. But it incentivizes them to do these media events where maybe a year or two ago, they'd be like, you know what, I need my time off. I want to spend time with my family. I don't want to do media. But I can tell you that this DAP program has been super successful. It has motivated the RFK drivers to
Good.
do a lot of media. So the more media they do, Johnny, the more out front they are in front of people, perhaps new audiences, and perhaps that's what's going to achieve what they're trying to achieve, and that's make create more fans and reach more people. And I think it's working.
I love it. I love it. No, and like I said, I mean, I'm sure everybody that's listening appreciates you saying that, because that's what we want to hear, right? I feel like from a fan perspective, and I like to say I'm like kind of wrapped in a little bit of the middle of that. Definitely a fan, but also trying to build a brand of what I'm doing. I'm going to five, maybe six races this year, so I'm excited just to be in and around it. And I'm starting to see it for sure. I'm starting to, like I mentioned, the social media stuff you guys are doing. Like that stuff is awesome. In NASCAR, they did like a Grand Theft Auto video with Carson Hocevar. It was awesome. Like it was so well done. And so that's the stuff like we love to hear. So I appreciate that insight to that. I got one more for you. Again, I really appreciate your time. This is a fun one. Obviously, you already been to Daytona. We've got Talladega next week. Take all the races like ahead, looking ahead. What are you most excited to? What track are you most excited for? What event are you most excited for? I feel like I know what it is at this point, the answer, but I want to
I,
hear it from
I
you
mean, you've talked to
yourself.
me before. You already know the answer, and I've already been there, right? Because you alluded to it in your question. You said, "I know we've already been to Daytona."
Yeah.
Daytona's my favorite racetrack, right?
Yep.
For a lot of reasons. I just love to go to Daytona. Is there one that I have circled on my calendar still that I haven't been to since 2016 that I'd like to go to? I don't know. I mean, I look forward to all of them at this
Yep.
point, right? I'm looking forward to returning to all of them. Talladega this week, yeah, I'm excited about that. It's been a very long time since I've been there. It's a great place. It's an exciting racetrack. I will say this: it, I have some, I don't know, nervousness, if you will, that I probably never had before going to Talladega because now I'm going there as a PR guy, right? I'm going
Yeah.
there as a representative of a team, having gone to Daytona already and seen one of our cars get upside down, I've got that in my head a little bit because I know part of my job is that if something happens, I need to go to the care center and I need to be very concerned with what's going on there. So
Hmm.
Talladega offers a whole variety of things that I, as a PR person need to be attentive to. So I guess I'm going in there, as a rookie again, if you will,
Yeah.
and so there's some nervous apprehension, but at the same time excitement.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I got a couple more this year. Kansas is my next one. Never been to Kansas City in general, and obviously never been to the track. So I've only done 1.5 miles in my life. I did Vegas a few years ago. So Kansas, can't wait for that. Richmond will be a cool one. Historic facility. I'm going there. New Hampshire, obviously, I try to get to that every year. And then also trucks at Lime Rock. How about that? That'll be fun.
That
That'll be
is
fun.
cool. I'm not going to be able to make that. RFK doesn't have a truck team, so I won't be in attendance at that one. But I've been to Lime Rock before. I love Lime Rock. Beautiful part of Connecticut. The
Beautiful.
racetrack's really neat. It's going to be fun. I already sense some excitement in the state of Connecticut about that. So I think the folks up there in the Lakeville area of Connecticut, Salisbury area, they're going to be in for a treat. No
That's
question about it. By the way, just a little piece of advice when you go to Kansas City: Jack Stack Barbecue. That's where you need to go. There is no other restaurant you need to find, but I think there's 5 or 6 locations, but they're all spectacular. If you like that kind of
unbelievable. Unbelievable. So my cousin she works there like once a month. She'll go out for a week. And I texted her, this was probably like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, what's a great barbecue place, right? And she's like, you gotta go to this place, Jack Stack.
thing. Oh,
And
good.
with the burnt ends, right? Is that what
Of
they
course.
Yeah, yeah.
The
So
burnt ends, the ribs, everything there is good.
awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, it's me and 8 of my friends, 7 of which have never been to a NASCAR race. So we're trying to, I'm trying to help, right? Trying to bring the new fans there. So
That
I
is
can't
good.
wait. Yeah, I can't wait. But man, I really, really appreciate your time. It's good to catch up with a fellow Emerson alum, always. We'll keep in touch. Best of luck to you and the team. As I said, I'm rooting heavily for Priest. It's really, really cool to see how good he's doing. I always said, right situation. If you like scroll through my Twitter, like it's just once every 10 tweets is like, I told you, just give him a chance. I promise. And so
Uh,
it is awesome to see that come into fruition. But once again, thank you, the great Mike Massaro here on Johnny on the Track. We've got betting show next Tuesday, so make sure you tune in for that as we talk the great Talladega. It should be a fun week leading up to that. So thanks for watching, everybody.